Okay, and we are back. Um, so we are playing Vergence, and we were just about to get ourselves settled in and then possibly jump ahead to a meeting with the leader of the expedition and meet some of the other NPCs. Are you folks doing anything in the meantime? You have a couple hours to get yourself set up into quarters, do other stuff, get your people set up.
Yeah.
Um, Anything you're specifically doing along those lines?
So let's establish because so we're on this big old train.
Yep.
What is I guess that maybe this is just because I like to always detail out the world because that's the funnest part to me.
Go ahead.
What does our train car look like? I mean, it's more to the other players than to the GM to come up with
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
I've said it's that these are triple decker cars, but we
Yeah,
haven't laid that out in any
yeah.
more detail. If you want to add more ideas about how the
So
train is set up, that's cool.
triple car, but bullet train, kind of like just big, round, steampunky, lots of brass. But like I said, they're set up so that when they are traveling along the way, they are going to go through worlds, and they're going to need to get closer and closer to being basically able to be dirigibles. So the cars will separate, and then there's a balloon attached to the top of each car so that as it gets closer, it can start, because the reality will be
oh yeah.
morphing the content of the train, but they're trying to make it easier, you
Oh
know.
no, that I get. I'm more interested in what's on the inside. Like, what does our compartment look like? Like,
Oh,
how are we
well,
getting
I don't know
settled and
about
what are we
you,
getting
you
settled up? Yeah.
two, but I'm picturing like the classic kind of Death on the Nile train, kind of, very velvet
Orient
seats, oh, the
Express.
whole Orient Express, yeah, that's what I'm picturing. Is like it's all very, you know,
I would almost
very
imagine
lovely.
it's like less set up like a train and more like rooms in like a fancy, almost like a hotel, similar to
Mm.
the situation you're talking about, just like not rows of seats. Um, at the very least, like we're operating as some of the highest power characters around.
Hmm.
And I don't know for certain, but I presume that this train we're taking is probably linked to the Tormillion Way. So
Yes.
we've probably more or less just like commandeered or like taken control of basically like a luxury train with a few extra like riders
Yep.
that are like cargo. Um, so I imagine, especially for us, like the train we're assigned to and the train we're going to be, the train car with, oh, what's the leader's name?
Kind of.
Kyneth. Yeah, so
Yes.
Kyneth's um, like main car, I imagine it's almost like being in practically like ballrooms.
Yeah. I dig it. I dig it.
And
So
then
then I
our
think
warriors are in those wooden pews.
they have a bunk, like
Hmm.
like they have bunk, like probably not like super spacious, but I imagine it's like little
Yeah.
cubby bunk holes, and then you have a space for your weapon
Yeah.
above and shield and all that, and
Yeah. Yeah,
I like the
they've
idea
been in
that the
worse
beds.
worse situations, I think.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's
Well,
they're
the
not
beds have this
marching. This is
little
actually already
arm.
super luxury.
Oh, they love it. Yeah, the beds have a little arm that does this, that has an indent that's just the size of a saucer, so that way the tea or the coffee does not, roll around. It's perfectly indented so that when the morning drink comes, the little arm can be brought and they can be sitting in bed having their tea, you know, all the things.
I think then settling in for Titus is going to be tearing up all the soft stuff and trying to find himself this nice hard piece of floor
Oh no,
to
we've set aside we made a room for Titus. We took one of the rooms that doesn't have soft beds, like,
yes.
because otherwise you'd be tearing shit out of the walls, and it's like, no,
It's actually
no,
like
let's.
slightly spiky gravel. Uh,
It's an
Yeah,
Maybe
I
a bed of,
actually
interesting
I
a
choice.
had them
bed of
throw in
nails would
some
be very
hay.
comfortable for you.
Yeah, I actually had them throw in like a bale of hay just to be an ass. Like, here we go.
Um,
It's like,
as far
hey,
as
it's
the
soft.
time before the meeting, I think that Hawthorne is not necessarily like quote unquote settling in. There's probably a period of time we're going to be on this train, but I think to
Mhm.
Hawthorne this is only a like step, and Hawthorne's not trying to like get comfortable or like Hawthorne's more concerned about the farther point, like the destination, rather than
Mhm.
uh, this minor step uh, in the
Mhm.
travel. So I think Hawthorne is probably meeting with, because I mean there are people above us. Kyneth is the leader of the expedition, and there are other
Mhm.
bloodline people involved. Um, as well as non-bloodline people who potentially have power over things that we don't.
Mhm.
But I imagine that Hawthorne is probably meeting with people below our station because we are also part of the expedition and probably prominent within it.
Mhm.
And she's kind of like dispensing information and making sure people are informed or like trying to gather any information about Ilium that she can, just like from the resources gathered by the greater expedition. So um, I don't think it's a very like rest or relaxation thing for Hawthorne.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe she's traveling around with Ravi, um, if that makes sense to you.
Yep.
Meeting people, checking in. There are again. There's this is a larger, thing than just you and your people. There are several contingents of servants, obviously, including seamstresses, as Kirsten pointed out, but also lots of other people who are going along on this expedition. There are clockwork soldiers from the Duchy of Tresol. Tresol actually runs one of the big companies that creates clockwork servitors. And so these are all wearing the badge of the Duchy of Tresol. They are, some of the standard military forces that the Duchess commands. Um, so they're bouncing around and tucking themselves very efficiently into train cars because they can just turn themselves off and they can be kind of layered in. So there's a whole car full of clockwork soldiers that are just kind of stuck in little bins, setting
That's not
themselves up.
creepy at all.
No,
Their eyes
not at all
follow you when
creepy.
you walk through.
Yep.
And their little mechanical eyes follow you, right? All of
Oh,
them. Right? Uh,
Yeah.
so they're setting themselves up, and so you meet with commanders of some of the different units. Um, One of the NPCs is Bulrin Corsyth, who is the director of the Blue Diamond Company. So you see some of his guards setting themselves up into one of the train cars. They have a very recognizable uh, logo of just four triangles, and that are surprisingly blue. The Blue Diamond Company is an interdimensional trading company. It has offices in Agoros, but also in all of the other Vergences and many other anchors. So that they're one of the big, um, or probably the biggest company that focuses on setting up expeditions and caravans and trains and uh, trade across thousands upon thousands of worlds. So he is the leader of that and therefore quite important. So you connect with some of his people, some of the other folks, set things up. Is there anything you're specifically trying to set up, or you're just making connections and checking in?
Yeah, just connections, just like checking on the same thing as like Hawthorne was checking on the gear that Ravi and I were bringing. Just like checking up on other people, making sure there's not anything unexpected or strange going on, or
Okay.
maybe they know something we don't. But
Mhm.
I'm not trying to obtain any specific objective or anything
Okay,
mechanically.
cool. You're just kind of playing things out. Now, when you set up a one of your own contingents or cohorts, you're allowed to select edges and flaws. As edges are small advantages for that, but for each edge, you need to pick a flaw. For her, you pick the edges that she's independent, which means she's very good at just going off and doing things very competently. She'll take independent action. She'll be proactive. You also took wild as the flaw. So I was just hoping to kind of um, flesh her out a little bit. How does, what do you mean by wild?
Yeah, I think I took a bit more control over Ravi. Um,
Yep, yep.
and as far as wild, um, I was thinking more in the sense of like um, very like I don't know how to say this in in the vein of like nature, uh, Ravi is likely to uh, potentially um, go off for like trying to capture a rare like game animal that she might find, or like kind of exploring uh, a unique location that would be in this Vergence, um, or wherever in the Umbra that we end up going.
Hmm.
And she's prone to giving into that sort of like desire, like indulging her interest in kind of like random nature related things.
Okay, cool. The game, in the game, it says that that's kind of prone to debauchery and rowdiness. But if you want to define that differently for her character, I'm fine with that.
Sure.
All right. So, so she's very independent and able to go off and do things on her own, and you can take advantage of that. But also, she might get distracted by, her engagement with wild and natural things.
Sure. And we could write that in as unreliable potentially as well, because that would be
Hmm. Sure. Yeah, if you want to make a change to
She's
that,
not
that's fine.
a party girl. Like, all right, woo, let's go drink now.
right.
Yeah, apparently not. Okay, that's
No.
totally fine. Awesome. I just wanted to get a better sense of how you see that
Hmm.
for your characters. And then for edges and flaws, for the Legion troops, the uh, the edges that they're tenacious, which they're going to just keep going no matter what, but also principled, which I see as there's a Legion code,
Yes.
and if you were to tell them to do something that violates the code, then they're going to just say no.
Yeah. They're mercenaries and all that. They're part of the Legion. They're not
Mhm.
bunch of I don't know, black cape wearing goons. Like for
Sure.
lack
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
yeah.
it's hard to bring them on some of our runs because they tend to get a little restricted in their willingness to roll with the punches and try new
Hmm.
things and pretend to be other people. They're
Yeah.
not very good at that, but
No,
we're
they,
working
they
on it.
will do things that are honor. They will follow their code of honor, and as long
Yeah.
as you stay within that with them, they're fine. But there's the potential for that to go to be a problem for you, depending on how the game plays out. All right, cool. Anything else you want to do before meeting with Kenneth? Nope. You had a
Actually, I
couple
wouldn't
hours.
mind quick looking. I mean, asking about because we haven't really gotten into where we're going. I mean, we
Hmm.
all know, but I don't think we've may even mentioned it. So I wouldn't mind also just have to get it said out loud and all that a little bit, but kind of look a little bit and ask around what people have either surmised or guessed or kind of already know about where we're going. Essentially, I mean, this is an
Sure.
expedition, but or and we
Hmm.
know it's Ilium and it was a war and all that. But curious, like, have people been talking at all about kind of like, oh,
Sure.
it's expected to be this, or are there any rumors? What's kind of the feel of
Hmm.
the expedition essentially. Like, what are people kind of expecting, or what are people not worried about, or yeah.
So you're just chatting people up who are on this expedition, servants and soldiers, and
Probably
saying hello.
definitely more along soldiers than anyone else,
Okay.
but yeah.
All right, I'm going to call that a gather information role. In this game, you can, when you're trying to acquire information, often it's just freely available. But if there's any value to having that be a random factor there, that could be an action roll if there's risk involved, or it could be just what's called a fortune roll to just randomly see how useful the information is. There's not any particular risk, but there's a random factor to how much information you get. So I'm going to call this a fortune roll. There's not really any risk you're taking by asking these questions. These are perfectly reasonable questions to be asking to random people. Nobody's going to get offended by this. Um, and you can use kind of any trait that makes sense. I'm
I
gonna
was Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead and propose
I
something.
was gonna say either persuade, just kind of that general kind of
Hmm.
talking with people, or
Hmm.
maybe contrive, but nah,
Hmm.
that feels a little bit too crafty for this. This is more just kind of being personable.
Sure. Um, yeah, so I think resolve is I'm sorry, not resolve. Persuade is a perfectly reasonable trait to roll. That's you have one dot in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you could push on that roll if you really wanted to, or something like that to try to manipulate that. There's no position or effect with this roll.
I don't think I want to push, but and this is a fun time to introduce mechanics. What about a devil's bargain? Can you
Oh,
take a devil's
interesting.
bargain on a fortune roll?
Yeah, no, you could take a devil's bargain in this game is that you can freely choose to have something bad happen uh, or troublesome or problematic happen in order to get an extra die. The GM can propose exactly what the details of a devil's bargain are. Any of the players can propose what a devil's bargain might be. The player making the roll can always say, "Yeah, I'd like that die. I'll take that bargain," or they can say no. So it's a way to kind of manipulate the fiction and move kind of control what kind of trouble you get yourself into. We don't normally do devil's bargains. I actually don't remember doing a devil's bargain on a fortune roll, gather information roll, but I don't see
I
any
love
reason
it.
not to do that. Um,
I don't want peace. I
so I'm
want
totally
problems.
good with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have an idea for one, or do you want me to try to come up with something?
I the kind of half idea I had was somehow in his kind of going around and talking to people, Titus offends someone important.
Okay.
Kind of maybe blowing someone off because he's less concerned with the leaders of the expedition and all that thing, and he's more kind of concerned. What are the rumors traveling? He doesn't really so much care about, like, what I don't know who's in charge. Kenneth or Ketch or Bolrin. Like, yeah, they're gonna
Hmm.
have their party lines or whatever, but he's more concerned about, yeah, like, what are kind of the rumors. So that was my initial thought.
Okay.
Um,
Let's say that we had already established that Kindness Major Domo is Delius.
yes.
And let's say that you annoy Delius because in order to talk to his people, you should go through him. And you are talking to, you're just randomly talking to these folks who have other duties who are not supposed, and you persuade some people to talk to you who they probably shouldn't have been talking to you other than just formally say yes or no, sir. That makes sense?
Yeah, I like it. And I mean,
Okay.
what's he gonna do? Is he gonna try and stop me? Like,
It's not going to stop you. Maybe at some point
exactly.
later in
So
the
there's no problem.
expedition, something will play out negatively. We'll see. So that will give you two dice to roll. It's a fortune
Perfect.
roll, and that'll
Making
just determine
friends
how much information you get.
sounds good. So I'm gonna roll two dice. Oof. Okay. Well, not a super great
You roll
roll. I
three.
rolled a 3 and a 1, so 3.
Yep, yep. So again, you roll multiple dice and take the highest one. In the scale for almost all rolls in this game, 1 to 3 is a poor result, 4 or 5 is a medium result, 6 is an excellent result. If you're rolling multiple dice and you roll 2 or more 6s, then you get a super awesome extra great result. You rolled a poor result. So um, on a fortune roll, that doesn't mean nothing happens. It just means that you don't get as much as that you might find useful.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm going to say that you get conflicting information
Yeah.
and it's hard to figure out what's actually true. So you hear some rumors, but they're different rumors. One rumor is that because the serpent has chosen not to send any representatives on this expedition, that means that they're really behind whatever is happening in Ilium, and there's some kind of plot from the serpent, and that there's a rumor that uh, that somehow uh, people from the serpent have managed to get into Ilium and will and are you're kind of acting against them.
Heck yeah.
On the other hand, there's another rumor, and that rumor you've kind of heard. This is sort of a conspiracy theory story that's been bouncing around for many years. Um, so the official story is that the empowered bloodline of Ilium was wiped out. That the
Yep.
war was at the end got truly vicious, um, and you know to the equivalent of like nuclear war blowing everything away. Just vast amounts of power thrown in, and so there are stories of kind of the last stand in the last bastion during the war, and
Yeah.
the allied powers of the Vergences, instead of just fighting it out hand by hand, just blasted this last bastion into bits, and that just utterly destroyed the ruling uh, nobility of Ilium, just extinct. But
But
there have always been stories that there were survivors, and
Ooh.
that there is some uh, that and that they you know survived, went out into the Umbra, escaped out into the Umbra, and that there's always been stories that there are aliens out there. Maybe there's a conspiracy penetrating the Vergence bloodlines. Maybe they have some sort of stronghold out in the Umbra. It's sort of like on this world, Nazis on the moon stories, right?
Gotcha.
Uh, or Nazis finding Atlantis or something like that, right? Um, Not quite the same thing, but the same kind of
Kind of
range of
feel. Yeah.
crazy stories out there. But you,
okay.
with this, those stories have started to really escalate, and you hear some stories along those lines. So you hear uh, stuff like that sounds conspiracy-ish, but in this world, conspiracies, well, on
Yeah.
Earth and in this fictional universe, conspiracies sometimes turn out to be pretty close to the truth, right? So you hear some things like that, you're not sure which might be right.
Huh. I believe clearly all of this. The serpent is actually just the Ilian bloodline, and they just moved to the serpent, and we all just forgot or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I think Titus will properly take them with a grain of salt, but interesting to see what kind of rumors are flying around. Okay,
Mhm.
that's all I wanted to do before
Okay.
uh, the dinner. I guess Titus will go and get dressed.
Did Mika want to do anything other than get cozy?
Uh, so Mika's underlying plan anytime she is around her half sister's people
Mm-hmm.
is to get to know them better and to get close to the people around Kyneth.
Okay. Uh, can you say a little more about what you would be trying to accomplish there?
Well, just getting to know people. I mean, I'm new to the family, and I understand, I have a lot to learn, and it may be that there's information that would be useful to me and my father later, especially if Kyneth makes any mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
It would
Ooh.
be good to be close to, the people around her,
Mm-hmm.
just so that I can be supportive,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
because that's
So
really, I mean,
that's what you want to do.
oh,
Okay.
of course. I mean, I'm here to help.
You're here to help. So what
Yeah.
has your relationship uh I know you have your father is Isaac,
Hmm.
the Viscount of Illic, one of the major houses, but not the same as Tresol. So there's a little bit
Yeah.
of conflict there between him and his daughter that you have clearly identified, um,
A little bit.
and that you have a pretty positive relationship with your father and a pretty negative relationship with your half sister. Can you give us maybe an example of a time when you took your father's side over your sister's side, or vice versa, you got caught in some little.
So I met Bulrin, out in the worlds,
Mhm.
and over time we discovered that I happen to have some traits that are linked to the bloodline. And when I met, he brought me home and I met my father. It was a wonderful thing, explained how I ended up among the lost. and
Mhm.
and then, I mean, I understand it's got to be difficult, being the Duchess and trying to rule, and having someone come out of nowhere who's part of the bloodline. She didn't have to try to have me killed, and it was really clumsy and awkward. And honestly, I'm embarrassed for her, because I really don't think her people are very good.
Mm.
I mean, strategically, it was just a poor move. I'm, as I said, I'm here to help. So,
I mean,
really,
Elias wasn't even able to stop me from talking to the people,
exactly.
so clearly.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to make sure that I'm in position to be the most supportive sister I can be.
Okay, awesome, very cool. Uh, are you actively doing anything,
I'm just making
or are you
inroads with the
just kind of
people around
hanging
her.
out?
I'm
Okay.
I'm collecting data. I'm getting pieces of information. I'm finding the, you know, I'm mapping the relationships.
Okay. How
Just,
are you doing that more in a passive observation mode, or are
oh, I'm
you
just
trying
chatting
to?
with people, and
Okay.
wandering into the kitchen and helping somebody who's about to drop something, and I
Mm-hmm.
hand it to them and strike up conversations. It's actually really easy to do. People just
Mm-hmm.
don't put in the effort,
Right. Okay.
you know.
Um,
I mean, I understand it's connected to my abilities, but I mean, honestly, if just people tried harder,
hmm They were just a little nicer.
nice helps, and
hmm
sometimes, then there's a
hmm
time to not be not so nice,
Right. But, it never hurts
you
to
know.
help. Um, okay,
Space
cool.
Heroic kindness
Swayze
can
always
be
gets a
better
pass.
balance.
So let me know if you're kind of taking formal action along those lines, or you're
Oh,
just kind of setting up
just setting
conversations.
up future,
All right. So
setting up future inroads.
you're not trying to recruit agents to your side or anything. You're just
Not yet.
talking with some people. Okay.
Not yet.
All right.
No.
Cool. So I'm not going to ask you to ask you to do a roll, but I can see you. I can see, uh, you know, um, uh, Delia's finding you helping in the kitchen and being kind of shocked that a bloodline character would do such a thing.
I don't see the problem. I mean, I'm
Um,
just here to help.
uh, very well, madam. If that is your preference, um, and he allows you to do that, but he gives sort of everyone in the kitchen a look as he walks
And that actually helps me tremendously.
out. Yeah, because they all give each other a look after he walks out,
And
and
then they're
that kind of
much
breaks
more
the
willing to
ice.
tell me things.
Uh-huh. Okay, cool. All
Oh,
right, well, let's jump ahead to there's 7 o'clock. There is a dinner. How is I'm particularly interested in how Titus is dressed.
yeah.
So, you guys are familiar with how like a classic male salsa dancer is
Okay.
dressed.
Oh, I
Very kind
love it.
of tight pants, slightly flared out though towards the bottom. Kind of those nice
Puffy
heely
shirt.
boots. A nice kind of puffy
With a
shirt.
clicky heel.
Yeah, with a heel, which means he's 2 meters plus now heels.
Right.
Uh,
But it also goes click, 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 click when he
yes,
walks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and that V in the shirt goes down like to the belly button type
Uh-huh.
thing.
Yeah.
And of
And
course
then
his
yeah,
chest hair is perfect.
oh yeah,
And like
I
a
feel like
chain.
he's yes, just I would say he has no actually no jewelry. Jewelry is nah. He doesn't need to show off jewelry. It's
Uh-huh.
completely
That,
unadored. His body is jewelry. Um,
yeah, that would distract from him.
exactly.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Some ruffles along the edges of that kind of V cut,
Hmm.
um, and probably some nice little ruffles at the edge of the cuffs and all that.
Okay.
And I like the idea that it is a deep, deep purple.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, like black pants, but deep purple. Shirt.
Nice.
Very
But no
nice.
hat.
No, well, no hat.
No hat.
Not
Okay.
enough space for the hat in it.
All right. Do either of you two wear anything notable or
Oh,
remarkable, or just your regular
oh, yeah.
clothes? Or
I One of the things you'll notice about Micah is that whenever she does any invited things by her sister, she always goes and makes a point of putting on the little tiara that her dad gave her. So she
okay.
just makes sure that I mean, it's only appropriate, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh, Hawthorne does not. Um,
Okay.
I think Hawthorne is much more in the vein of business over
Mm-hmm.
politics,
Mm-hmm.
and is probably used to spending most of her time uh, away from the Vergence that she is a part
Mm-hmm.
of. Although she obviously still has connections to it and a number of people along
Mm-hmm.
the way, um, she doesn't typically concern herself with like trying to impress people.
Mm-mm. No.
Mm-hmm.
And and Hawthorne will has commented in the past that when we've all traveled together, Micah's a lot different when she's not home.
Oh,
Like
sure,
clearly she's kind of locked in and being very, you know, but as soon as she gets away from this group, it's a very different person.
sure,
Mm-hmm.
So I think Hawthorne might be either amused or annoyed, but at the whole, princessy thing.
sure. Yeah,
So
I don't know that it's.
yeah,
I don't indulge it. I don't like cater to Micah's like act. But
exactly.
I don't necessarily. It's not a bother because you're not doing it to me. So
Mm-mm. No, I wouldn't do that. I'm
Mika,
only
I'm
doing
not
it for my
enabling.
sister.
I
And
don't
here
know if
Okay.
now.
Titus notices a difference. Like, yeah, these are
No, Titus doesn't. At one point he commented, "Ooh, shiny." Like he likes
oh
he likes the
Tiora.
tiara, you know.
You could use that to stab a man to death.
That may be its future.
Aim for the eyes. It's very, very thin.
Good point. Well made. All right.
All right, so you arrive in the first car, which is Duchess Kyneth's car. You are greeted by servants in Tresolian livery, uh, led up into there's a formal dining room at one level of the car. Obviously, can't be a gigantic space, um, but it actually kind of there are people with the ability to manipulate space and dimensions, and this room you kind of look and it appears to be bigger on the inside than the train car is on the outside. Not gigantically so. It's not 10 football fields across, but it is notably large, and so that's slightly disorienting as you get in. But there's a dining table, there are sideboards, there are servants, and it appears that Kyneth is taking advantage of the fact that you know uh, that you are not away from civilization now, and so she can put on a really excellent feast
Mm-hmm.
because there are kitchens within the train, but also she can have things brought in. So she greets everyone. Um, one thing about the bloodline characters who have been through the trial, they have attuned to one of the Vergence power sources. Is that as Kirsten described, that changes you. You are physically, your body is destroyed and remade, and you come back different. That typically means that you come back with a mark, what is referred to as a mark. Uh, Titus does not have a mark because he has not attuned to a Vergence, but other characters do, including NPCs. So I visualize Ineth's mark. She is a tall, rather severe-looking woman, and her mark is that she's got down the center of her forehead um, a dark line, and then in her hair that continues up through her hair. Different people have speculated as to whether the hair is dyed or whether that's part of her mark. Nobody's quite
Oh,
sure.
it's completely died.
I thought you'd have an opinion on that. Uh, and she is dressed in a very formal gown. Um, and Kirsten, if you want to have the color of your clothes be perfectly the same or perfectly in opposition to the color of her clothes because you've got that whole tangential convenience thing going on, you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of decide whether you just happen to be in the right clothing to play off of hers for or against.
Oh,
You can
yeah.
do
I mean,
that.
hers is this deep, sort of wonderful emerald, but it's got overtones that are a little shimmery yellow that doesn't
Mhm.
quite work. And it
Mhm.
just happens that my dress hits the emerald tones and the color balance is really perfect. It's not,
Right.
I mean, her dressmakers are great. They're
Yeah.
great.
Hers is
It just
her
didn't
her dress is
quite.
very nice.
It's lovely. It's
Mhm.
yes. It's sweet.
So both of you have, kind of shot silk multicolor uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, fabric, um, and yours is exactly the same color, only just a little bit nicer.
A little bit.
The undertone is
Yes, we
just
did.
more perfectly balanced.
It is. It's got a little more blue, a little more teal in
Mhm.
it. It's a little richer. It better
Uh-huh.
matches the jewelry, and
Uh-huh.
she's got the mark, which
Hmm.
is a little star and crown that is it's very nice. It can be covered by, any
Hmm.
really formal thing, but the gown is actually made a little wide
Hmm.
so that the mark shows.
Okay. Cool.
And
Awesome.
it's a mark that no one of royal bloodline gets.
Hmm.
It is a mark that's come up on other people.
Okay.
That's the crown and the star, but no one has ever gotten this mark that wasn't of the royal bloodline. And oh, it just happens to be similar to her dad's. He's
Uh-huh.
got one like it too.
Okay.
So
And she
later,
does not.
Yeah, and it's
war
just this
better
cute
appears.
little,
Hmm.
and she
And
might have she might have added a little makeup to make it, a
just
little
stand
more
out a little more.
defined. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit.
Okay. Cool.
You know.
And then, always as we go forward, whenever you want to just happen to be in the perfect clothing, you've got
Mm-hmm.
that tangential convenience. You
Yep.
happen to have chosen exactly the right color. You didn't even think about it. It just, it looked nice, so you picked
Looked
it, and
really
then it
good.
turned out to be perfect.
Yep.
I think Hawthorne, this probably is an unfolding silent drama as people enter the car and Kyneth is uh, eventually revealed. And I think Hawthorne kind of like whispers to Titus, like, I feel like there's a war being waged.
And Titus's like grin just kind of goes a little bit wider as he
Yep.
starts looking at the silverware potentially laid out of like,
And
okay,
and and Micah's curtsy is flawless.
Of course, yes.
Like she drops the ultimate deep curtsy.
The
Smooth
ultimate
down,
piece of
smooth
you
up.
curtsy.
Oh, it's just absolutely perfect.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, I think it's a little dangerous to use the W word with Titus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
war.
Yeah, he's looking
Yeah,
at
Yes,
compared
some
to
war.
silverware. Like, all right.
so I
Yeah,
think
we're
Titus
not.
is smart enough to understand the idea of a social,
He does understand
Mhm.
social war too, but he can always
yeah,
hope for the more
yes,
Yes.
more physical kind of.
maybe
Oh, I'm
maybe something
sure
fun
there
will
will
break
be non-social aspects to this war
out. Well, we'll
at
see how
some
it plays
point.
out.
Um,
So
yeah.
yeah, Kyneth greets each of you, introduces you to her staff, since you'll all be working together,
Mhm.
including we've already introduced Delius, who uh, uh, does give Titus a little bit of a side eye there, but is formally perfect. Um, Other people there. We have a couple other characters that you had chosen to be your connections who are on this expedition. One of them is Ketch. Ketch is noted to be a warrior. These NPCs, the game doesn't actually define them in incredible detail. Um, uh, they're intended to be fleshed out. So what the game says about Ketch is that he is a master of fighting skill, and then it gives three kind of descriptor words that he is formidable, domineering, and loyal. Um, and if we look at connections with Ketch, that's a connection for both Hawthorne and Titus know Ketch. He is not a bloodline character. You haven't neither of you have selected him as your close friend or rival, but you both know him, have had dealings with him over the years. Okay. So he is on the expedition, and I'm going to say that he has been um, recruited to lead another troop of warriors. Not as many as your legion, um, but we'll say that they look extremely competent and dressed all in, let's say, red and gold.
Ooh. So these are like
Uh,
the elite, like Praetorian type.
Praetorian
yeah,
Guard, yeah.
Praetorian Guard, Delta Force special operator types, right? They kind of uh uh they have that strut when they're walking around that isn't taking any guff. Um so uh so Ketch is there. He is dressed in I think formal military looking uniform ish thing, black and gold. I'm sorry, red and gold. Um, what? So Titus, how do you know Ketch?
So I definitely think Titus has history with the Legion. I don't think
Hmm.
he's a full-fledged member because I believe it's mentioned they kind of have rights and then you're kind of sworn in, you know. And I
Hmm.
think Titus is a little bit too independent to be a
Hmm.
Legion member. But I think he's worked with and against them in the past. Um, he's definitely met I think Ketch at least at some point when they were on a campaign or in similar kind of goals aligning. Um, Perhaps even trained under Ketch at some point when he was trying to find new fighting styles, new ways to you know
Hmm.
take a tin cup and use it to kill someone. Um, so yeah, so I think
As it should be.
they're not like good friends, but they're definitely aware of each other, especially once you get up to a certain level of fighting prowess. I think in the Umbra you have to be aware of each other a little bit. You
Hmm.
know,
All right. I want to say Ketch is a former member of the Legion, but there was a
ooh,
falling
betrayer. Okay.
out.
Loyal to
And
what?
whatever the story is, there are two sides to the story, and you know, from his perspective, he was pretty reasonable. From the other side's perspective, not so much. So, sitting around a campfire, you could, kind of argue exactly how that played out and who betrayed whom. Uh, but that's Catch. And Hawthorne, how do you know Catch?
I was gonna say something slightly similar, which is Ketch being a formidable warrior. I think that Hawthorne probably went and also trained under Ketch, maybe post Legion. Um, uh, and I imagine that Hawthorne trained like firearms, or
Hmm.
was involved in like maybe I. It's also possible that I taught Ketch some things about
Oh,
firearms,
right.
uh,
Yeah.
given my disposition, or
Yeah,
like
maybe he taught you some close combat skills and you taught him some of the really fine points of technical sniping.
yeah.
Okay,
Ah,
cool.
so both
Uh,
former kind of students of Ketch or semi-students, I
Yeah,
guess.
or yeah,
Ish.
trading skills back and forth, right?
Yeah, that's maybe a better
So,
way of putting it.
Ketch gives each of you a smile. He appears to be happy to see both of you. Um, and says he is pleased that you have joined the expedition. Um, and I think he can almost match Titus's handshake in strength.
I for some reason maybe but I imagine him being played by Jeff Bridges, but with like an eye
Oh, okay.
patch and a little bit, kind
Okay.
of like muscular and all that.
Uh-huh. All right. Yeah. Jeff Bridges in the shaved bald look from the first Iron Man movie.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. Yeah, and that deep rumbly voice.
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly.
that
Oh,
Okay,
dude.
works.
cool. All right. Yeah, that's the image that's now in my head. Okay, very cool. All right. The other major NPC who is there is Bulrin Corsyth.
Yes.
Um, we have already established he is the leader of the Blue Diamond Company.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of visualize him as sort of not that tall, very wide, um, dark skin, uh, and sort of blustery. Um,
Big
he
bear
is
of a man.
described
Yeah.
as a little pretentious, little kind of ruthless, kind of calculating, but we've already established that he has a good working relationship with Mika. Maybe you've led some expeditions on his behalf in the past, and you have close business connections. And one of his expeditions was the one that found you and brought you back the to your heritage and finding your father. Um, so you have a positive relationship with a fairly positive relationship with him. So he smiles, pulls you into a big hug. Again, he's not that tall, but he is,
He's big
like
and
as
she's this
wide as
tiny
he. One
little
of those
thing.
guys
So
who's
it's
as
the
wide as he is tall.
yeah.
Um, Gives you a hug. Gives everybody else a smile. You all sit down to a formal dinner. Um, I think it goes fine, except for there being just this natural tension between the two half sisters, which plays out in terms of formal, uh, uh, friendly discussion of various things with
Hmm.
little jabs stuck in here and there.
Well, I understand it frustrates her. I just have a good memory, so I remember the names of all of her staff, and I greet them and ask about their kids with accurate names and mention, and just happen to be one of the people, oh, and was it your mother is better now? Oh, that's good, you know. And on the way to the table, and at one point, Kyneth gets the second, third generation footman's name wrong, and I correct her. So, yeah, little things. It's like,
Okay.
you know,
Um, are you trying to set anything in particular up here or achieve some kind of social kind of effect, or are you just kind of
at
playing
some
back and
point,
forth with her?
well, so Micah's always been very lucky, always been able to make relationships, always been able to make connections, but she's also seen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she was brought in and sort of made, oh, by the way, you're related to this royal line and had done the trials and all of that, she was open to her sister, her half sister, being an ally until Kyneth had that clumsy attempt at killing her, and that was just so pathetic. And so Micah's take is really that she's just shoring up all the relationships around Kyneth
Mm-hmm.
for any potential future time where she needs to take the floor out from underneath her.
Could
Okay.
If that needs to
could
happen at all. Hopefully
could
not.
I suggest something, just as
Please.
maybe a future
Yeah.
plan?
Mm-hmm.
Could Titus start to be getting friendly with Kyneth and
So you
start
can always, by the way, flash back to having
Oh, yeah.
talked
that's
about
a
what's
like
going to
like
happen.
flashback to or Titus, or if it'd be more realistic, Hawthorne getting friendly with Kyneth in the sense of like, oh, maybe there's some split or something in the group, so we can, you know, like maybe a flashback to discussing this amongst ourselves of preparing for battle and all that, or preparing ourselves for dinner. Um, I mean, yeah, like so make it
Mhm.
look like there's an angle for Kyneth to go, so we can kind of choose at least where she's gonna attack at
Mhm.
her sister if she chooses to.
Right. Now, one thing to note in terms of relationships. So, Kyneth is Mika's negative, rival connection.
Yep.
Um, of the three major expedition members, however, you three select their relationship to your group, and one of them is a friend and one of them is a rival. You have decided that Kyneth is actually quite friendly to you as a group, even if she's not
Yes.
so happy about her
Hmm.
half sister, and that
Yep.
Ketch is your rival. Is that what you want to? I mean, is that how you want to keep playing it? I mean, we could switch that around if you wanted to play
I
it different.
was I was thinking actually keeping and that positive being explained with maybe even Hawthorne and Titus basically not like being friendly with Kyneth and all that,
Uh-huh.
even if the sister and all, and Mika, be nice to your sister, or something
Mhm.
else.
Okay. So I think maybe at some point, Titus actually shuts Mika down a little bit
Mhm.
and allies with the with Kyneth, and maybe you
Yep.
even said in advance you're going to do a little bit of that playing back and forth, so
Yeah.
Mika's expecting it.
Yes.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, no. Um when we first came as a group,
mhm.
Mika separated from them so they could meet Kyneth without her,
Okay,
but that was also discussed.
Yeah.
okay,
So
cool.
we're all on the same page of
All right.
the shifting
Mhm.
alliances. It's like,
Okay. So
you know,
Kyneth appears impressed with Titus and pleased that Hawthorne is with the group. She is chatting in a very friendly way with the two of you.